In the late 80s, when kids met each other for the first time, they didn't ask what their name or age was or what football team they supported. There was just one question. Who's your favourite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle? Mine was Donatello. Hello there, welcome to Saberduelgaming, where we always take the high ground, and welcome to our retro review of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 Turtles in Time. By the early 1990s, console gamers were treated to a host of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games. Didn't matter what console you had, there was going to be a Turtles game coming out on it, and the majority of these were that classic side-scrolling beat-em-up style that we've seen before in games like Double Dragon, Golden Axe, and more recently, Cobra Kai. Whilst it could be argued this got a little bit repetitive, the reality is the Turtles were absolutely perfect for this format. First of all, you've got 4 characters, and once they realised early on that these could be used to represent your 4 lives, it became a winning formula that they tended to use in all of them. It was pretty easy to animate all 4 characters because, apart from some minor differences in the weapon they host and the colour of their bandanas, knee and elbow pads, they pretty much look identical. Cuts down on cost and animation. The majority of your foot soldiers are, well, the foot soldiers. But you've also got end-of-level bosses, pre-designed for you by the cartoons themselves. The game was absolutely perfect for the Turtles, and the Turtles were perfect for this game style. However, we did see a lot of them across the different consoles, so where does Turtles in Time rank and fit in with all this repetition? Okay, so let's clarify exactly what game we're reviewing here, because this game has a proper muddled history. So, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Turtles in Time was the 1991 arcade classic that was later ported to the Super Nintendo Entertainment System under the modified name Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 Turtles in Time. However, it was only in the PAL region in Europe that this modification was made. The idea was that it made it a direct sequel to the 3 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games that had already been released on the original Nintendo Entertainment System. However, just to muddle this up even more, that area, the PAL's region, was the only region where Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 on the NES wasn't released. Are you confused yet? Stick with me because the confusion does not stop there. You see, the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive didn't actually get a port of this game. It instead got a different game called the Hyperstone Heist. However, that game copied huge chunks and elements from this game, so is effectively a alternate version of it, I suppose? It's all very confusing. Either way, the version we are reviewing is the Super Nintendo version, so this is very much Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 Turtles in Time. Have I lost you yet? I hope not, because now we can actually start reviewing the damn game. So, what's the story behind this? Well, obviously stories have never been especially important for these side-scrolling beat-em-ups, but given how many of these Turtles games we'd seen, they needed to give us something a little bit different to keep it spicy. So the game starts with Krang, for some reason, stealing the Statue of Liberty. I've never really quite understood what that had to do with the rest of it. And soon, after a little bit of a chase given by the Turtles, Shredder sends the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hurling through time, back into the past, and this is where the mission and the story starts to take off. Turtles travelling through time, although there is quite a bit of the game before they even begin that. From there, they're just about trying to get back to their own time, to stop Shredder and Krang from causing too much mischief. So there's the story. How does the game play out? Well, we've already spoken about how this game has us playing as one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at a time until we run out of lives. The game takes us through individual levels, both in modern times and in the past, up on the surface streets of America, and inside the sewers, inside Krang's big high-tech lair. The level designs are actually pretty good and varied. They don't all just move side to side either, going up and down lifts, and travelling on vehicles as well, just to keep things quite entertaining. The combat system and moves available are nothing revolutionary, but they're enough to keep things fun, and the designs of the villains, whilst the main ones are a little bit repetitive, there's only so many different colours of the Foot Clan that you can really see before You get a little bit bored with that, but at least the end of level bosses are always quite entertaining. We've got some of the old classics like Bebop, Rocksteady and Baxter Stockman, but we even see some of the newer villains like the Rat King and others from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. So, how was this game received when it first came out? Well, as with most games which are limited by both the game style but also the brand itself, it did have a fair bit of variety in the scores, but none of them were negative. The lowest ranking I was able to find was around 75%, and the scores went all the way up to 90-91%, so overall, this game was received very well. The game particularly received plaudits for its bright, colourful visuals, the beautiful graphics of the animation for the turtles, and the way in which it was able to produce something of a faux 3D effect, throwing characters out into the screen, as well as other characters shooting things into the screen. This was something that we'd seen in the arcade game, but it would have been very easy to miss this out on the SNES. They didn't do that, and that was something that the critics really liked. The soundtrack as well was beloved and had some really catchy tunes in it, as well as having some minimalistic vocals from the turtles themselves. Entertainment Weekly even referenced that while the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles may have peaked on the big screen, in video game land, they are just starting to reach their true potential. That's high praise from something which isn't even specifically a video game brand. As always, there was a few criticisms for the game, however, I can't really argue with them. One commented that the game was quite repetitive. Now, that goes without saying in this type of game. This type of game focuses on a very repetitive style of play. However, the fact that the majority of the enemies you're fighting are the Foot Clan, and they're all identical, barring the fact that they've changed the colours of their mask, you're presented with the exact same villain to fight, often 4 or 5 of them on the screen at once, and they're all the same. This really doesn't help the repetitive nature of this type of game, and whilst there are a few different villains that fly along, such as this pterodactyl, however, that just isn't really enough to make up for the repetition of those same ninjas. The other criticism thrown out there is that the game just isn't long enough and, for most gamers, is probably too easy. There's not really a question of if you're going to be able to complete it, just a matter of when. However, these criticisms have done very little to tarnish the game's reputation. Even in 2023, it was ranked amongst the top 25 beat-em-up games of all time, and was also ranked within the top 25 SNES games of all time. These accolades coming from Time Extension and Games Radar respectively. But how does the game stand up now? Yeah, let's do it. How does this game stand up to modern scrutiny? Well, the game is still clearly beloved. In 2009, there was an updated version of it with improved 3D graphics. And even last year in 2022, they released the Cowabunga collection, with this being one of the featured games on it. For me, playing it personally, I didn't actually find it that jarringly easy. Certainly a lot of the other side-scrolling combat games like this are easier than this one. It wasn't a massive challenge, but it's also a Turtles game, for God's sake. There was a fair bit of variety, although the constant repetition of the Foot Clan's troopers in different colours did really begin to bore me, and I got a bit fed up of fighting them over again, if I'm honest. This didn't feel like a game that I could play for hours and hours on end, but it certainly felt like a game I'd regularly come back to and enjoy. It hit the nostalgia button perfectly, and as side-scrolling beat-em-ups go, it stands up to any of the other ones I've played, like Double Dragon and Streets of Rage, really well. However, that is comparing it to retro games, and gaming has moved on. This sort of side-scrolling beat-em-up has not really been something we've used so much, so when it comes to rating this game, it's still really fun and really good for a type of game that we don't play so much anymore. So for me, I think giving it a rating of 7.5 out of 10 is pretty fair, and it's definitely deserving of another playthrough. But what do you think? Do you remember this game? Comment below, let me know. And until next time, pop on a like and take the high ground.